dedication and for your presence. I'd like to appreciate the long hours you have dedicated this week so that we could seek a consensus around such important topics. And as I've been saying, there is no solution apart from absolute cooperation among our countries in order to achieve a fair, inclusive energy transition. And for this reason, it needs to be people-centered, as we all know that it was given due to the need for sustainability, but it's also a huge economic opportunity for the world to use it in favor of our people's parity and peace construction as well. I've been repeating a message in almost all my public statements and in roundtables and meetings around Brazil and abroad as well when we talk about energy transition. There is no fair and inclusive energy transition while there are people in a situation of energy, in lack of energy poorness. There will be no fair energy transition when there are communities that are dependent on old and unreliable fossil fuel based generators. As long as hospitals and daycare centers do not have a reliable energy sources, putting at risk thousands of people around our country, there will be no energy transition while families throughout the whole world are still cooking through dangerous means. Energy transition is fundamental for the economy of the future, the green economy, but it depends on how we will be tackling the present, the current issues, and how we are looking at people. The government, under the always present President Lula, has put people in the center of our transition. We have been working a lot in the universalization of the access to electricity in the program Luz para Todos that has taken 17 million families out of the darkness. And we have been bringing other energy alternatives to the Ribeirinhas communities and people, families from other remote regions in the legal Amazon. We are talking about cities with the lowest human development index. And nowadays in Brazil, many families already have photovoltaic panels and can live without being afraid of running out of power. But this is not our priority. It's our duty to guarantee more possibilities for improving their life quality of the families involved in the program. And today we have invested over 26 billions in the program Luz para Todos, light for everyone. And we have invested another 15 billion. And this is the amount of our commitment and the priority given by President Lula to the inclusion of the populations. This inclusion means an increase in improvements in their life quality. It means giving them dignity. It means giving them conditions to buy water bombs and water pumps and also household appliances. And it means thousands of women benefited by the program returning to their study, and 244 million women have effectively started in the job market. Thousands and millions of people are being involved in a more promising future, and it involves public policies to all energy sectors biofuel sector and mining sectors as well. It's really important for us to have a very responsible policy in terms of mining, which is a fundamental activity so that we can move on with the energy transition. I here refer to the critic ores. That's why we have created a national policy for the populations that have been reached by disasters related to mining and other communities that have impacted by the mining activities, especially critic ores. It's our duty to protect our people. We have also been improving other aspects in the North region, such as the program Energy for the Amazon. It's fundamental to integrate the big cargo centers to generate economy and benefit millions of people in 5 states. We have been transforming around about 30% of our thermal power plants into hybrid plants, and we have been replacing diesel for natural gas. Decarbonization is key in this moment, either in the evolution of the legislation for carbon capture with the future fuel, which will be issued on Tuesday in Brasilia, and I have already invited everyone, or even in the decrease of
J'ai plus de son. Hein. Ah.
especialmente na questão da recolocação da mão de obra e a criação de empregos mais qualificados. Não podemos deixar de lado os trabalhadores do setor energético atual. Como dizemos, ministra Teresa Ribera, o governo do presidente Lula não deixa ninguém para trás. E a nossa transição energética não vai deixar, tanto quanto ele, ninguém para trás. Nós reunimos governo, sociedade civil e o setor produtivo para discutir e propor soluções para a mudança da nossa matriz energética. Esse é um avanço do país como Estado. É uma política de Estado. Não adianta um partido, uma gestão ou alguns estados da federação concordarem. Temos que avançar juntos, em cooperação. Não há outra alternativa. Vamos construir um Brasil melhor, um mundo melhor, apenas quando tivermos uma política energética que leve em conta todas as camadas da sociedade, que tenha uma base democrática e que esteja alinhada com as demandas do setor produtivo e da realidade de uma economia que vai salvaguardar o planeta, a economia de baixo carbono. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Minister Silveira, for your kind words. I really now would like to invite Dr. Fatih Birol, Executive Director from the International Energy Agency.
Mr. Minister, Ministers, dear colleagues, a very good morning to all of you. I say a very good morning, but there are several members of our commission who are online, different parts of the world. In this part of the world, in Latin America, from Colombia to Europe, from Europe to Asia, and they are following us. So first of all, very many thanks to Mr. Minister and also Deputy Prime Minister Teresa Ribera for being the co-chairs of this very important commission. Mr. Minister explained very, very wisely why Brazil takes this approach. Clean energy transition, yes. Clean but inclusive. as such, Brazil's leadership will be extremely important for the entire world. And as Mr. Minister mentioned, in Spain, we have seen in real life how the transition can happen without burdening the different parts of the population, especially low-income groups, and making them more beneficiary. So from that perspective, I am very happy that the Brazil and Spain are chairing this 27-member commission, bringing government leaders, labor leaders, communities, and NGOs together. Dear colleagues, when we look at the numbers, it is so obvious that a change is coming in the energy sector. Very obvious. The world is going through an adventure now, a transition through direction of clean energy. This is very good for our planet. But is that enough? In my view, not. Reducing emissions is very important, but it is not everything. A change is good if it is beneficial for everybody. And therefore, we need to make sure that the change, this transition, is not only beneficial for the emissions reduction, but also for all parts of the society, especially those who are underprivileged. From that angle, I see that current energy system has a few important inequalities. Within a nation, between nations, between genders, and between communities. So our hope at the IEA is this clean energy transition should be made in a way that those inequalities are also addressed. Because we want to have a better world, not only for the intellectuals enjoying their coffee in Champs-Élysées, or enjoying their walk in Fifth Avenue in New York, or in Sydney, or somewhere else. We want these changes for the entire population. So therefore, we thought at the IEA, bring wise minds around the world together from different walks of the society, from governments, businesses, from labor communities and the research institutions, to come up with suggestions how we design our clean energy transition policies in a way that we don't make a mistake. And we don't even aggravate the current inequalities in the energy system. So this is the reason we work with Brazil this year, and we are coming up with a program called Designing for Fairness within the context of the Energy Transition Ministerial Commission. What we are doing is, basically, there are already in some countries best practices, how it is made. For example, we know that there are countries who are leaving the coal behind. It is good for emissions, but we have to make sure that the coal miners or the workers who work for the coal power plants and their families are not negatively affected. And this best practice is coming from one country, we are sharing with the other countries and other sectors. So from that angle, I am very happy that the many colleagues in our commission have contributed to our thinking. My colleague Brian and Jane, they are here. They are the secretariat for this work, and we are hopeful that the clean energy transition will happen faster than it is going now, but also more inclusive. To finish, dear colleagues, I think to have this meeting, it is the first meeting of this commission. There wouldn't be a better place than Brazil. Because as Mr. Minister said, President Lula put the people at the center of all its activities, including the energy transition. And maybe if Mr. Minister agrees with me, I want to share with you one anecdote. When I met in January, I was here in Brasilia. I met President Lula, several ministers, and when I met the Mr. Minister, I made him two surprises. One of them was I gave him the jersey of my football team, Galatasaray, and he responded with the Brazilian football team of Pelé. I was very happy. The second thing is I propose, Mr. Minister, to be the chair, co-chair of this commission. Normally, when you make a proposal to a minister, many of us know, ministers say, I ask my advisor, let me look at it, what is in, what is out. Mr. Minister was so excited that he immediately accepted without asking his advisor. So from his body language, from his determination, I understand where Brazil wants to go and where Brazil is going. And I thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your and Brazil's leadership in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I kindly invite Sara Munoz to take the floor.
Thank you. Bon dia. Good morning, dear ministers, excellencies, and colleagues. For me, it's a pleasure to be here today, and it's really a pleasure to have co-chair Minister Alexandre Silveira with us. Thank you for hosting this meeting in such an amazing place in your beautiful country. Thank you very much. Querido Ministro, parabéns por la excelente organización de este congreso, este meeting. Thank you very much. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the International Energy Agency, to Dr. Fatih and his team, to Jane and to Brian. Thank you very much for the excellent work done. Vice President Ribera has asked me to convey the best wishes for today's meeting. She would love to be here today, but finally it was impossible to attend this important, very important meeting. This commission, with a broad participation of all the stakeholders under your leadership, is very important. Today is the beginning of the journey, and it's a very important moment because it's time for action, and this action must be people-centered, of course. I would like to start highlighting that the paper, the report presents with the 7 questions are very relevant, because it's the good time for those ones, and it's very relevant for all of us, all stakeholders. We can take the advantage now in this moment to combine decarbonizations with solutions that improve people's life. This is very important. In this regard, as Dr. Fatih was expressing, in Spain, we have a long experience, like in Brazil. For us, this is very important. Dear Minister, for us, people-centered, just transition, inclusive transition, gender balance, equality, they are pillars of our policy. So I would like to share with you our experience on our approach to just transition. So the transition that we are developing is resting in 3 main actions. The first one is we have the experience that we need specific structures to deliver. That means that challenge and opportunities of the transition must go in hand with a concrete administrative structure. In the case of Spain, we have the Just Transition Institute. The second is that we ensure that workers' representatives, today you are here, you are a core element to take action, but also business sector and civil society are engaged in the policy development. Since the very beginning, you have to be there. And in the case of Spain, we have a concrete experience that I would like to share with you. We signed a tripartite agreement that means that the government, trade unions, and coal-fired power plants owners, we have an agreement to fulfill different commitments in terms of employment, workers, and communities. The third one, which is a main pillar for everything, but in energy transition, in just transition, even more, it's the planning. We need a concrete planning and strategy designed for fairness. So we approve our just transition strategy with elements like reskilling of workers, fostering the creation of new jobs and green jobs, supporting affected communities through something that we call just transition agreements. The just transition agreements start with an assessment of what are the socio-economic impacts. With that socio-economic impacts, we jump into the next phase, that is the definition of the geographical scope. We identify the most affected areas on this transition. So that's very important. Who is most effective and where are the concentrate action by governments, but also by business, and how we can help in the new development of new business models. So we continue with something that is always very important, the public participation, open participation to local stakeholders. That's a key of success. We need to open the window for all the municipalities, the people living the truth. Everybody can be engaged in this planning. And as the final result is where we have tailored approach. That means that we have ad hoc solutions for different territories and communities, with the focus on creating new opportunities in terms of job creation, obviously, industrial projects, energy projects, new business models. So ecological transition and social justice have been at the center of the Spanish government policy. It's going to be in the future, and I think we are very much aligned with resilient policy on this specific issue. People-centered transition ensures that no one is left behind, because energy transition, as Dr. Fati was mentioning, is not only about technology, it's not only about infrastructure, it's about people, it's about jobs, it's about communities, it's about health and welfare. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for your leadership. Thank you, Fati, to you and to your team. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sara Muñoz, Secretary of State for Energy of Spain. Now, I kindly invite Brian Mothaway from IEA to present key policy design considerations for affordable and fair transitions, a report from IEA. So, Brian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ministers, friends and colleagues. Just very briefly, before we hear from our eminent speakers, to remind everybody of the context of our meeting today, which is a historic moment at the launch of the first statement of the Global Commission. And we're delighted to the co-chairs, to Fati Birol, to Mariana, and to all of you and your teams for the work you have put into shaping this, what we think is a very important and valuable statement, produced for today at the invitation of Minister Silveira, so that we could make an input into the G20 discussions that are happening today and in the coming weeks and months. And we're delighted to be here. And the Global Commission have put together a set of 7 key design considerations that they think, and we certainly think too, will be key issues for clean energy transitions. And these are set out in front of you. I won't go through them in detail, except to remind you that they cover key issues such as labor, equity, skills, inclusivity, involvement of Indigenous communities, making sure that policies are fair and the people who need to benefit from them most do benefit from them the most. And I think the the Commission has done excellent work in identifying the key issues, but also identifying key examples of policies from every part of the world that are really working and making a difference. And I think this is advice that all governments and stakeholders will be able to make use of. This is the end of this first phase of the Commission, but we're looking forward to working with you all in more detail in the coming year. And again, at the invitation of our Brazilian leadership, we look forward to looking towards COP30 as another key moment in this conversation. So the Commission will be working between now and then to further develop the concept of what does a key roadmap towards inclusive and fair transitions look like. And we look forward to working with you all on that. And we particularly look forward to hearing from you all this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. So moving on, now we are going to start a new session of this event, Key Perspectives on Fair and Affordable Clean Energy Transitions. And to begin this conversation, I kindly would like to invite Luc Triangle, General Secretary from the International Trade Union Confederation, to provide his remarks.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you, Executive Director, thank you, leadership of the IEA, to take this point into your agenda, because you could have made it easy for yourself and focus on the technological challenges of the whole energy transition. But you clearly understood, and that's also visible in this report to which we have been able to contribute as I2C with our 200 and more million members in 170 countries, you clearly understood that we need to put the social dimension at the equal footing with the technological dimension. Because if we fail on the social challenges, the technological change will not be accepted by public. The technological change will not be accepted by millions of workers and citizens in the world. So I think it's a sign of leadership that you put technology and the social dimension at the same level. And the need for fairness in the clean energy transition is an issue that is at the same time poorly understood, but crucially important. It is important because the structural changes of our energy system are profound and only just starting. The social impact on jobs and the cost of living only now starts to become important. And we know very well that doing nothing to deliver the clean energy transition will be much more expensive than implementing good policies now. And we also know that both the impact on jobs as on the energy price can be positive, but this will only be the case with well-designed policies. And that's why this report and the work of the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions is so important. And sorry to say, in a room with ministers and with ministerial representatives, but we are convinced that fairness in the energy transition is still today poorly understood by many policymakers. Too often we see fairness only becoming a consideration after the measures are taken. Then we have to deal with job losses, then we need to deal with increased prices, etc. While this should be a consideration right from the start. One of the aspects least understood by policymaking today is the role of collective bargaining and social dialogue, because we need to create ownership. Everybody needs to feel part of the process, involvement. It is a fundamental of the social welfare state, as we know in many, not only, but mostly today, European countries. The report refers to very important analysis from the OECD. The OECD analysis suggests that low emission sectors are less well represented in social dialogue and collective bargaining. In addition to active labor market policies, fostering collective bargaining and social dialogue can be key in driving positive outcomes and improving working conditions for high emission workers transitioning to low emission sectors. And why are so many workers and their communities so reluctant to embrace the clean energy transition? Because they see time and time again that they are or left behind or that they are going to worse conditions, working conditions in low emission sectors, often due to the absence of quality collective bargaining and social dialogue. And workers are left with bad, flexible, low-wage contracts, and this makes it hard in society to find the urgently necessary support for the transition. On a personal note, I was in Poland 2 years ago when we signed with the Commission, the European Commission, the financing package. My unions, my miners' trade unions said, we are leaving now our well-paid, good, decent jobs in a difficult industry What we don't want is low-paid, unorganized jobs in the tourist industry or in other sectors. Without any bad word on these industries, on these sectors, but we need to make sure that there are new decent jobs coming up. The good news is that we have the tools and the instruments to deal with this. Promoting social dialogue and collective bargaining are at the heart of just transition, which is needed to implement fairness in the clean energy transition. Energy and climate ministers have to understand this. Social partners have to be ready to engage in this. Last year at the COP28 in Dubai, in the decision on the Just Transition Work Programme, for the first time ever, there was reference to the respect of labor rights. This is an important hook for policymakers to integrate the principles of just transition in their climate energy policies. When governments are preparing their new nationally determined contributions, they need to engage in quality social dialogue with the social partners. And as very last point, it would be good also to refer to our own I2C for Democracy campaign. Often the anti-democratic calls of the far right are combined with climate skepticism. For us, it is clear that it will be the common workers everywhere in the north and the south that will be the victims of the lack of climate policy, and that we need engagement from the workers through their unions to develop real alternatives. It is not a surprise that many right-wing politicians are against and actively undermining social dialogue, workers' participation in combination with climate skepticism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luke, for your thoughtful inputs. Now, I kindly open the floor for Charlene Gale, former chair of the First Nations Major Projects Coalitions. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I'm the former chief of the Fort Nelson First Nation, and today I'm representing the First Nation Major Projects Coalition. So good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today to be part of the Global Commission on People-Centered Energy Transition. As I said, my name's Charlene Gale. I'm from the Fort Nelson First Nation, and our people have lived here for time immemorial on the unceded Treaty 8 territory in the West, which is now called Canada. Our organization represents 190 First Nation members, and we're a nonprofit organization. At FNMPC, or the First Nation Major Projects Coalition, our First Nation members work together as a coalition of the willing to enhance our economic, cultural, and environmental well-being. We understand that a strong, robust economy relies on a healthy environment supported by vibrant cultures, languages, and expressions of traditional First Nation laws and customs. This work done by our Indigenous coalition is a key part of Canada's role in the global energy transition. As the world shifts to a low-carbon economy, we must not only support jobs, training, and skills and education, but we must also center Indigenous nations as decision makers. For the First Nation Major Projects Coalition, that means 3 points that I want to make sure are part of the discussion here today going forward. Indigenous ownership of projects is vital to the success of the net zero transition. Indigenous nations and people need capacity supports to level the playing field for Indigenous nations to build new clean energy projects or any projects of their choosing. Indigenous, free, prior, and informed consent must be secured for all projects that impact our lands. These 3 points align well with the Global Commission's own mandate to identify strategies for ensuring that all energy transition policies are fair and drawing on international best practices from Canada, including those driven by First Nations and Indigenous people all over the world. As we transition into a cleaner energy system, we have an opportunity to improve people's lives, create jobs, and build a healthier environment. To my first point about Indigenous ownership, at our organization, 85% of our project portfolio is in clean energy. We are helping First Nations seek ownership of transmission lines, hydroelectric facilities, wind and solar farms with the private sector. And in some cases, our membership is advancing their own clean energy projects that are 100% owned by their nations. This is exactly the case in my home nation of the Fort Nelson, where Tude Ka project is being advanced. We are repurposing an old oil and gas well to bring clean energy to our community. This project came under my leadership when I was chief of my nation, and I'm very proud to say that this project is not only Indigenous-led, but it is being led by women in our community. My second point is the importance of capacity support for Indigenous nations. The energy transition means Indigenous nations, like minority or colonized groups of people, need the proper capacity support to be placed in retools and to reskill to take advantage of clean energy jobs as we move away from traditional forms of energy production. The professional skills and tradespeople that it requires to run the oil and gas industry are jobs that are transferable to the clean energy economy. A huge investment will be required to educate our young people, as many of our workers will be retiring. Tude Ka geothermal is proof that we can create clean energy projects, jobs locally, and stand as an example to be followed. Today in Canada, Indigenous nations are already the largest owners of clean energy assets after government and utilities. For Canada and for all countries with Indigenous people, we must better support a net zero transition that centers Indigenous people and nations. This support means government must provide capacity support and support for Indigenous ownership as well as jobs. My third point emphasizes Indigenous free, prior, and informed consent. Tude Ka, as well as all Indigenous-owned projects that our coalition supports, are all examples of where net zero projects also meet the needs of not only economic viability, job transferability, and energy reliability, but also supports Indigenous energy sovereignty, self-determination, and free, prior, informed consent. Energy reliability is a real thing for us back home. Fort Nelson is not connected to the rest of our province transmission grid. Many Indigenous nations are not connected to the grid worldwide. This is both a reliability issue and an issue of security. The transmission interties that connect my home region to the neighboring provinces burnt down last summer in the largest forest fire that our province has seen in recorded history. When the power lines went down and the fire caused many blackouts situations several times, we have winter conditions where it could be up to -40. So you don't want to be losing your heat at this time. But this has been a reminder that having our own local power sources, our own local jobs and economy will be very important coming in the decades of forest fire as forest fires intensify. This is true too for First Nations across Canada and around the globe, where pursuing energy sovereignty dovetails with energy reliability. FPIC, Indigenous ownership of project, is not the same as free, prior, and informed consent. However, when we, Indigenous nations and people, are owners of new net zero projects, it centers us in decision-making and making important decisions on such the type of projects, the scales, where it will be sited, and where it will be built. What industry partners do we want to work with? And in some cases, and when we sell the power, regardless of whether Indigenous nations ultimately choose to be partners on net zero project, no project should go through or go forward without the explicit Indigenous free, prior, and informed consent and clear benefits to the Indigenous nations whose lands and waters are impacted on any project. I encourage you to look through the First Nation Major Projects recently released and publicly available National Indigenous Electrification Strategy that details points similar to those that I have just made. Well, as an example of Indigenous clean energy ownership and the findings of our Indigenous electrification roundtables, our strategy not only makes the case for the importance of Indigenous ownership in clean jobs, in clean energy projects in Canada, but much of it can be a blueprint for global policy that relates directly to the Global Commission's mandate. There are many opportunities to pursue our global journey towards economic reconciliation with Indigenous nations through net zero transition, and I look forward to exploring these opportunities and policy solutions required to implement them. Finally, I'd like to thank our co-chair, Deputy Prime Minister Roberto, and from Spain, and the Minister, Alexandre Silveira from Brazil for the opportunity to share my perspective today. Masi and hi hi.
You for your thoughtful inputs. I will do a little bit of messy in the agenda right now to kindly invite Minister of Labor and Employment of Nigeria, Nkeruka Onjeyocha. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Now we are listening.
Are you hearing me? Hello? Good afternoon.
We are listening
Hello?
to you.
It is an honor to join this distinguished gathering and contribute to the critical conversation on clean energy transition and their impact on workers globally. As we drive forward toward a more sustainable energy future, it's imperative that we ensure this transition leaves no one behind, particularly those whose livelihoods have been intertwined with the energy sector for decades. Nigeria is fully committed to this cause and has begun taking concrete steps to ensure that the principle of fairness guides our clean energy policies, especially in promoting and empowering our workforce. In Nigeria, as we speak, our clean energy journey has received additional push with a focus on the transport sector through the compressed natural gas CNG initiative. Nigeria's CNG initiative launched under the presidential initiative on CNG PICNG targets not only, it does not target only the carbon emissions, but also the creation of 25,000 green jobs. The Ministry of Labor and Employment, in partnership with the key holders, is leading efforts to ensure our workers are adequately trained and positioned for these emerging opportunities. Existing automotive technicians and mechanics are being upskilled to convert and reprofit and recruit petrol-powered vehicles to CNG-powered ones. This move is pivotal not only for our climate goals, but also for ensuring that our workers, many of whom have depended on traditional energy sectors, are not left behind in the shift to cleanest technologies available, thereby cleaning a path to transition for them. Our efforts to beyond the transport, go beyond the transport sector. Under the recently launched Labor, Employment and Empowerment Program called LEAP, the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment is rolling out a comprehensive training initiative targeting women and youth, two groups that are often disproportionately affected by economic transitions. This program will equip them with skills to participate in the green economy, with training focused on areas such as social kiosk and solar panels installation, greenhouse farming, recycling, amongst others. These initiatives aim to create opportunities for workers in emerging green jobs, reflecting our commitment to properly transition workers and ensure that we integrate the principle of fairness into the design of all clean energy policies. For example, women and youth are expected to make up to 30 to 40% of those trained under the LEAP program in the Ministry of Labor and Employment, ensuring they can take full advantage of the opportunities presented by the clean energy sector. Our approach in Nigeria is clear. Climate action must go hand in hand with economic empowerment by upskilling our workforce, creating new jobs in renewable energy, and fostering inclusivity. We are paving the way for a just transition that ensures prosperity and sustainability for all. It is not enough to set ambitions or ambitious targets for carbon neutrality. We must provide the means for our people, especially workers, to thrive in this new era. As we engage with the global community, our commitment to creating a people-centered energy transition is unwavering. Together, we can ensure that clean energy becomes a catalyst for society, social equity, job creation, and economic resilience across the world. And so I look forward to partnering with the whole world, making sure that Nigeria will take a lead in a short while, because we are committed. And like the last time that our president visited China, he took everybody on board and assured the world that we are good and we are set to change the narratives and to make sure that our country is meeting up to the standards of the world. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you so much. I now will go back to the defined agenda. So I kindly invite Ms. Hadiza Abdul Mumini, which is the global focal point for the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. Hadiza, you have the floor.
Thank you. Esteemed ministers, heads of delegations, and distinguished guests, good morning. It is an honor today to address the first high-level meeting of the IEA Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions, Designed for Fairness. As a member of this commission and the global focal point of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, I'm privileged to share my perspectives on ensuring fair and affordable clean energy transitions. Today, I speak before you as a representative of youth and as a woman from a community that had suffered the harsh consequences of energy inequality. I'm from a small town called Patuskum. It's located in the northern part of Nigeria. And to give a little bit of background, when I got admission to study law at the university, one of our very close relatives, my aunt, expressed surprise. And she mentioned, we are surprised that your dad, that's your father, is going to allow you to study up onto this level. And this was because the community is such that women often don't get the opportunity to go as high as studying up to that level. So today, a lot of my childhood friends and most of the women from that community you get to see are suffering from lack of education and also poor energy access. Over 60% of the women from my community and from the northern Nigeria use charcoal or firewood for cooking purposes. This affects their health, this lessens their productivity, and this makes them below average in a country that you already have unstable electricity supply, unstable energy access, or poor energy access. So now in Nigeria, there's this popular slogan, it's called Up NEPA. It reflects the excitement of all Nigerians when electricity is brought back. And this is because it's often unstable, but then it's a country that is also blessed with the natural resources for the alternative sources of energy. You have solar, you have biomass, the waste from all the agricultural activity going on in the country. So if youths are able to be trained, then they can be able to know how to harness those natural resources to be able to provide those renewable access, those renewable energy. Now, this, of course, all this experience, it shaped my perspectives, and I wanted to do more. So what I did was, number one, to begin the Clean Cooking Initiative in my own community, and that has helped a lot of women. There's more to be done, but it's a starting point. Then secondly, I furthered my education on the clean energy laws and policies. So you get to know how laws are made, and then how you can also be able to give your own perspectives on that. And then I joined the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. The SDG 7 Youth Constituency is part of the major group for youths and children, and is mandated by the UN General Assembly. We have over 2,000 members, and they are from all over the world. And it's so amazing that you see young people are really interested. They want to know how they can contribute to ensuring that affordable and clean energy is accessible for everyone. Now, all this has allowed me to understand that it is very important and very critical to have a transition that is inclusive, such that it allows people from marginalized communities, people from rural areas, women, young people. If we want to really have a transition that is sustainable, there's need for it to include everyone. Now, social inclusion is very important, so that you not have all these people from marginalized communities, the young people, the women, being trained so that they have the ability to be able to know how to use these clean energy technologies to ensure this transition. And then secondly, youth-led initiatives. One thing is, youths today are very passionate. A survey showed that over 70% of young people aged 16 to 25 are worried about the impact of climate change. So this means that they want to know how they can ensure that there's a transition that is inclusive, is sustainable, and equitable for everyone. So when you have youth-led initiatives, often it's because they are trying to resolve a problem that is in their community and beyond. So with that support, you get to support the energy transition, and then you also get to empower people in the process, that way giving them a source of livelihood. And in terms of policy making, we are the leaders of tomorrow, and we are ready to start working today. We do have perspectives to share. So if we're allowed to understand what's going on, and we're given the right resources and opportunity to also give in our own perspectives in the decision-making process, then it would be one that would be fair to everyone. So if there's social inclusion in the development of the workforce, and support of the youth-led initiatives, and giving us room to hear our own perspectives on the policy making and decision making, then you'd have a transition, a clean energy transition that is affordable and sustainable and fair for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights and very well noted contributions to this debate. I now would like to invite some participants here to join us in a roundtable discussion about fair and affordable clean energy transitions. And to start the conversation, I kindly open the floor to Minister Diego Pardo Lorenzo from Chile to do your initial thoughts. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, thank you to the agency for putting together this event, and also the position paper on people-centered clean energy transitions. I will start with a personal reflection. When I have a 10-year-old kid, daughter, and a year ago, she came with me in a day with trying to understand his father's job, and her reflection was, so you always talk about people-centered things and policies, but you often just talk about numbers and megawatts, $1 billion, and I haven't heard in during the day to name one single individual in your speeches. So today I'm going to talk about one particular individual, Maria Roa. And but often when you talk about a personal story, you need some context. So hold on, because I think I'm going to go a little bit over my time. In our country, we have this policy to foster the electrification of taxi cabs, and it is a very successful policy. We are able to increase the number of electric taxi cabs by many times, and it's a good program because we invest public money in one particular area, which makes a lot of mileage. So public expenditure is really justified in the reduction of emissions. So we started to find other ways to implement this program, and one public servant of the ministry came with the idea of doing this in electric bikes for delivery, and his idea was focused on the fact that in Chile, delivery by bike riders is made often in these irregular bikes that have combustion engines, little combustion engines that make a lot of noise and create a lot of emissions. So from an emission point of view, it made a lot of sense because they pollute a lot. So we started with this pilot, and during this pilot, we started to discover other things. We discovered not only that it was not only an issue about emissions, but it was also an issue that was related with the savings for the economic activity that we were subsidizing. If in taxi cabs we were able to bring down marginal cost of delivery to a third, in this we brought the marginal cost of delivery to 1/10 of what it was. So it also makes a lot of sense from the economic point of view. But we started to find out that it was also something about noise in the cities. Our cities were starting to, we were able to make more quiet cities. And not only that, we also discovered that this was not only about global emission, but these bikes were polluting when people were doing exercise on top of it. So it was also something about the health of the workers that were involved in this economic activity. And we also found that, moreover, our country, of course, is not able to produce electric vehicles. It's not, of course, in our process of industrialization, we're long from producing batteries for the electricity system, but we are able to produce electric bikes. And we were able to work with local producers to create our own type of electric bikes that responded to the social reality of the users of this bike. Particularly, we're able to develop a system in which you can take out the battery and just put and just leave the bike parked and taking the battery, which is very important because these bike riders are oftentimes immigrants, poor immigrants that lives in big buildings in which it is dangerous to live, to let this electric bike park be at the entry of the building, because they will steal it, so they can take the battery. All of this we were able to find out. And I think I will illustrate with the story of Maria Roa. When we were interviewing Maria for consolidating our experiences with the pilot, Maria said that a particular story in which this, I think it crystallizes. So she's a young immigrant that came from Venezuela, very poor, has a very hard living, and he came to this job because there was nothing else for her. But she hated the job. She was in a new country. She wanted to find ways of socializing, but she found that in this job, she was all day smelling oil, like his clothes were smell oil. And with the change of the electric bike, his life changed completely. She was able to go out and find friends, find a couple, and her self-esteem changed completely. I think this made us to reflect, because now we are discussing our budget, how we evaluate our policies. And we found that most of our policies in energy transition are mainly focused on global emission. And when you are in charge of a ministry, or you are in charge of a public office, you have to decide between programs and assign what it is, always a limited budget. And there is some dollar that you have to put somewhere and not somewhere else. And most of our decisions are ruled basically by the effect on global emission. And that's just one part of the problem. Of course, global emissions are important, but local emissions are important too. And the effect on public health and the effect on the workers is very important. And the effect on communities is very important. And the prospect of that your program creates some industrialization, even if it is small, it is also important. So I conclude calling not only to focus our policies and try to be a little bit smarter in the way in which we design policies, and not focusing only on global emission. But when we talk about people-centered policies, we have to be able to include these more complex ways of evaluating what we do, also in the policies with which we decide how to allocate limited budgets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Diego. Now, I kindly invite Maria João Pereira, Secretary of State for Energy from Portugal, to provide your considerations on that.
No. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like, I think you need to put it a little bit. First of all, I would like to congratulate the International Energy Agency and the Presidency of Brazil for promoting this people-centered energy transition commission, which aims to put the social component on a par with technological and environmental components. The fight against energy poverty must be a priority. In Portugal, we have an observatory dedicated to monitoring energy poverty that guides the government in defining public policies aimed at combating this problem in our country. One of these measures is the existence of a social energy tariff, a measure that guarantees access to energy at affordable prices for the most vulnerable population. Another example I could mention is our preventive and mitigation measures to improve the energy efficiency of our buildings, in particular the oldest, through financial support for the improvement of the insulation of the houses. So there is a full program for combating this problem. Portugal has the ambition to achieve the decarbonization of the energy system by 2045 and closed the last coal-fired power plant in 2021. This decision was accompanied by a program of adaptation and reskilling of workers in order to ensure a fair and equitable transition to guarantee that no one is left behind. The generation of new jobs and green jobs leveraged by the energy transition will be fundamental for us to be able to achieve this ambition. Otherwise, we will face strong opposition to this change caused by inequalities. For effective change, we believe that this is necessary to bring the citizen to the center of the energy transition so that they are an active participant, in which each citizen can be a consumer and a producer simultaneously. This is one of our priorities of the new government of Portugal, and to this end, it is promoting public policies that promotes self-consumption and collective consumption of renewable energies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I kindly invite Samantha Granham, Deputy Minister of Electricity and Energy from South Africa.
Thank you very much to the IEA and the Global Commission. Good Lord, I don't know if my voice is going to hold. You've had a good week if you've lost your voice talking. So thank you for everybody, and thank you to the IEA and the Global Commission for this opportunity. It's very much a key focus of our Ministry of Energy and Electricity. And also thank you to Brazil for the wonderful hospitality we've experienced. Jacob, I might have to ask you to do this. Putting people at the center of the just I can't do it. My voice is gone. I blame all of you. I apologize from there.
Let me try this. Can't do it in your voice, Deputy Minister, but putting people at the center of the just transition sounds easy. But whenever developing policies and programs that people first, we all know that implementation is a challenge. We all agree on the why of putting people at the center of just transition, but we need to do more to understand the how. While people have universal needs, these are all realized through the unique context that we all come from. Our uniqueness as people also become some of our greatest challenges. In implementing the people-centered just transition, we need to start with why we are all here today, to work together, to collaborate on our shared goals and dreams, and to bring them to reality. We need to learn and do and learn from our doing. Overcoming challenges is one of the greatest human truths, and our ability to overcome is what makes us better. South Africa has committed to a just transition that will support us in achieving our goal of net zero by 2050. In this, we have used excellent principles, evidence-based policy, and allocated as much funding as possible. We also recognize the principle of the triple A's in our approach to our energy policies and transition strategies. These are universal access, availability of energy, and affordability. This must be underpinned by a commitment to energy security. Unfortunately, our first decommissioning of a coal-fired power plant that was poorly planned and executed and riddled with mistakes. The closure of Komati without involving the local community, without really listening to the people and their real needs, and without a clear transition plan, as was alluded to by Spain, was a disaster. It is a disaster that we must learn from, and for South Africa, as we host the G20 in 2025, this disaster must drive our commitment to fostering and sharing of best practices and collaborating with each other so that we can move forward at a pace and scale that we can afford with as little negative impact on our communities. Disasters do not define us, but our commitment to making right what was done wrong and committing to not repeating a mistake will define us. We'll need to spend a lot of time building climate literacy by meaningfully engaging our local communities, by not talking at them and always actively listening to their real needs and wants. I can tell you from my personal experience over 13 years as a municipal councillor and a member of parliament in a pure municipality in an arid region, poverty, unemployment, and equality are the lived reality of many South Africans and our single greatest challenge. With an expanded unemployment rate of 42%, our task is not only to create jobs for jobs affected by the just energy transition, but to ensure that we create additional 3 to 4 brand new jobs for everyone, for every transition job, to bring down our unemployment. We can profess to the people's centered if we are not, we cannot profess to be people-centered if we are not actively seeking to improve the lives of all people, not just those directly affected by the energy transition. Our people deserve a transition that provides them with economic and climate justice to realize their full potential and to uphold their dignity as human beings. I believe that we are all here today with a shared commitment to improve the lives of our fellow citizens and neighbors. Our dignity cannot come at the expense of another's. In conclusion, I would like to thank the Global Commission for providing us with a space at the table to support each other in advancing our shared goals. And I look forward to taking this conversation forward into 2025 and beyond. We stand with the Global Commission in advocating for people-centered, fair, and inclusive transitions. We believe the lessons that we learned from Komati and our broader people-centered JET agenda will serve as a blueprint for ensuring that no one is left behind as we transition to a cleaner and more sustainable energy future. I thank you.
Thank you so much, and hope you can get better. I might suppose that these air conditioning might be influencing a little bit because of the different temperatures, but get well soon. I now kindly will hand over to Fatih Birol. We are very with a tight schedule today, but we have very nice discussions and contributions, and we look forward to have more moments to go further and to check the new chapters of this interaction and cooperation with IEA and all the Global Commission. So Fatih Birol, the floor is yours.
And thank you very much. Just to say that we are so delighted that there are so many concerned people around this table and in the screen, different parts of the world, that we should have a clean energy transition, but it should be fair and just. As our South African colleague said, without creating any problem with the dignity of this or that person, this or that continent, and going in the equal terms as the world, as the planet. So I'm very thankful to Brazil for putting this issue in G20 agenda, and I very much hope, Madam Minister, as we discussed yesterday, in the agenda of South Africa next year. It's a great news for us. But I will turn to my colleague, Brian Motherway, to tell us briefly about the next steps before the G20 meeting starts.
Thank you, Dr. Birol. Thank you, Mariana, Sarah, all of our colleagues. We were very generously invited to host this meeting on the margins of the G20 by our Brazilian friends, but it does mean we have to return that generosity and end at this moment so that the G20 ministerial meeting can begin. So I do apologize to all our participants in the room and online that we didn't have time for more dialogue. I hope we can continue these conversations even today, but we will make sure that all of our colleagues who weren't able to intervene at this event, we will follow up with you straight away for further dialogue and make sure there are future opportunities, because as Fatih and all of our speakers have said, it's really gratifying for us to see the focus and the commitment on this issue. We're delighted to hear such strong voices and the exciting and positive things that are happening. So certainly in our view, we want to create more space for more of this discussion. We want to hear from all of you and together work into next year in South Africa's G20, in Brazil's COP and beyond, so that we can further highlight these issues and really generate solutions that all the world can benefit from. So again, thank you very much. Mariana, particular thanks to you for all of the work and for stepping into the chair. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and thank you very much.